Welcome to the lighter side of the spectrum, the podcast that celebrates the multiple hats we wear and the juggling acts we perform in life. Whether you're parenting kids and teens on the autism spectrum, navigating the ever-evolving healthcare industry, or building a more inclusive and impactful world, this is your space to find connection, inspiration, and growth. Together, we'll share stories, tackle challenges, and explore how innovation and inclusion create better outcomes for everyone. Because no matter the spectrum, there's always a lighter side. Now here's your host, David Kaufer.
Welcome back to the lighter side of the spectrum. I'm your host, David Kaufer, and today's episode is one I've been looking forward to for a long time. If you followed our journey, you know that my son Stone is a non-speaking autistic young man who, after years at being underestimated by the system, particularly in the education system, he finally found his voice through spelling to communicate. But what many don't know is that there was a legal battle that happened behind the scenes that really allowed this to happen. A fight that ultimately led to a settlement that opened the doors, frankly, we never thought were possible. So today, I'm very honored to have the attorney, and welcome the attorney who stood beside us, fought with us, Lara Hruska. I had to say that. We were joking because I always mispronounced it during meetings. So I was afraid of that, but she gave me the proper pronunciation. But Lara is a founding partner of Cedar Law in Seattle and is one of the fiercest advocates for educational equity in our state. A Yale law grad with a deep commitment to civil rights. She took our case before she had much experience with non-speakers or spelling to communicate. And today she joins to talk about the journey, what that journey has taught her, what parents should know about fighting for access, accommodation, and justice in our education system. So with all that, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So let's, rewind it a bit. It's hard to believe in so many ways that it was almost 2 years ago to the day, right? It was about 2 years ago when we first connected. I remember at that time you didn't have a lot of experience working at least with spelling to communicate. I'm not sure, I can't remember if a lot of non-speakers, you have a lot of experience in this field, but, what guided you to kind of take this case in the first place?
Well, I think obviously, when we first met, we had a pretty solid connection, and education law it's a really intimate field. I feel like, you're dealing with the most precious thing in someone's life, their children and their education. And so it's really important to me to have a good connection with the parents that I'm working with, particularly for, significantly impacted students where I don't meet the student right away. I eventually met Stone and got to know him.
Right. Yeah. I want to talk about that too.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, just you and your story and hearing about it. And I was familiar with the school district that we were dealing with. So I had some with them, and I saw the path forward after our initial consult, and then we just kind of stuck with it and got there.
Yeah, and we had to follow. Oh, here comes Stone making his appearance as he tells you. Yeah, you have to. Yeah, you want to say hi? Okay.
Hey.
Just do it. He loves to make an appearance during the podcast. And hey, I have a couple questions for you that Stone wanted to ask a little bit, but it was such an interesting journey, and it was kind of, to the best of your knowledge, this is kind of the first of its kind, right? This case, certainly in our state. At least that I know of.
Oh, for sure. And I think, Cedar, my firm, brings the majority of due process, had it for 10 years now. It was the first S2C case that I've dealt with, and the first I'd learned of it. So it was not a steep learning curve, but it was a learning curve for me. And I think we made some law.
Yeah, I was going to say, looking back now, a couple years later, what stands out most to you about the case, and what, some of the takeaways? And have you seen it? It's kind of a multi-part question, but has it had an impact that's resonated? Obviously, with Stone, we know, but has it resonated beyond Stone in the districts?
Well, so what was the first part of the question?
I jumbled too many questions together.
Yeah.
Let's start with the first one. What stands out most to you about the case, looking back 2 years, looking from where it started to where we are now, as you know, with Stone?
Remember when we first So we met and then we quickly met with the school district. I think you had a meeting almost scheduled and you plugged me right in and I came in person and we met with them. And they were just hard no, like hard no about spelling, about STC,
Yeah.
about all of it. And I told you at the time, and I don't know where they ended up landing, but I think I told you, we might not change their hearts and minds, but we're going to get a
Mm.
program that works for Stone. And I wonder now, do they know? Like, have we changed any hearts and minds? I'm not sure. I want to circle back with the district and see, like, are they aware of how far he's come and how critical this program has been and that we were right the whole time? I'd be curious to go back to them and say, they were so resistant and smug and kind of mean during
Yeah.
people were kind of mean during the first meeting and like,
Well, all the meetings. I mean, the
yeah,
first meeting, they were adamant. Right. Like I said, definitely smug, condescending, I think as well. At least I felt towards
well,
us.
like constantly trying to like trick and trap you and just presuming incompetence and
Yeah.
trying to reinforce it was like, just felt like a lot of confirmation bias coming from them, which is what they were accusing us of, which was ironic, and then, but that's what I remember now. That's what I was just telling. I told you I had a speller intake today.
Yeah. Ironically. Yeah.
Yeah, it was like really good coincidence. And I told her the same thing, I don't care if we change hearts and minds. It could be cool. It'd be really great to open up people's hearts and minds, but really I just want to fight for the appropriate program so that your child can reach their potential. So
Yeah. Well, and that's why we're doing this, right? The podcast, my advocacy. I mean, that was one of the big takeaways after we were able to move forward. And again, just to kind of give people some background information, we could kind of walk them through this, right? Because like you said, you're right. The timing was, we had I think we figured out we had an IEP meeting coming up, and that's just, they said they'd kind of wrap this in with that. We got the hard no. Again, what's funny is, initially, we were just asking for letter boards in the classroom. Like, just, hey, can we just use these? We'll even train, we even said we'd train the para-eds to use them.
really,
That was the ask. And it was just such a hard, adamant no. And they said, well, we have to do this big assessment. And that's where they got into, trying to trick Stone. And again, cherry pick the data from these, quote unquote assessments. And that, to me, that's the thing that stood out most, is then they wrote up this report and, really focused on, the spelling inaccuracies and things like that, to, the confirmation bias, as you said, but totally ignored the proactive statements that Stone said, including when he first sat down and said, the happiest day of my life was my last day at the school, or vice versa, whatever. This place is toxic.
yeah.
And ignored that, and then just kind of stuck to their guns, right? I mean, they just would not presume competence.
Yeah. Another piece that I remember from our journey, and it was a long journey. I was just looking it up. Like you first in March 2023 is when you first.
Yeah. Okay. March. Yeah. Yeah. That's about right. That's when we pulled him. Yeah.
Didn't file the litigation until January 2024 because there was so much that we were putting in place. And first we were trying to work with the school district, and then we wanted you to try the one-on-one program that worked for him to show that it was working and to get some data and support, I think. And then we filed in January 2024. And then actually, when did we finally resolve? I don't remember.
I think it was about May or so. It took a few months, right? Because we filed and we had to wait, and there was mediation. And then, the mediation kind of fell apart, but then they came back again later and said, oh, well, okay, maybe, some of it was kind of pretty. I mean, you did a great job of kind of helping guide us through this. And it wasn't a lot of that wasn't super surprising, frustrating to be sure. And one of the things, and this has ultimately helped Stone, is you also told us, because we knew that, again, there was this bias. There's the stupid ASHA statement, right? That school districts are hiding behind. And, so they're just saying, look, this isn't a valid form of communication. And we figured, well, as soon as we can get Stone on a keyboard, that would help a lot. Right. That was one of our goals. And as soon as Stone heard that, I remember he said, I'm going to be typing on a keyboard, by August or whatever. And Meg, who you remember as practitioner, is like, Okay, well, that's a nice goal, Stone. But it typically takes longer, and he did it. He was there, and I think that was huge in terms of, because I think I'm sure that they may still try to invalidate it, but I think it's a lot harder when you see someone actually typing on the keyboard, even if I'm holding the keyboard.
Totally.
Right.
He well, what drives me so crazy about the ASHA prohibition is IDEA is meant to be individualized. That's the I in IDEA, right? Is individual.
Right.
And they weaponize that when they want to, school districts, but then when we're trying to advocate for something that's really an individualized, demonstrated support that somebody needs, they're like, oh no, there's a blockade on that. And it's like, well, how can you simultaneously, be individualized, but also have like a sweeping prohibition? So people were afraid. That's another thing I remember about our case. People were afraid to be our experts. Remember, we got
Yes.
ping-ponged around because one critical thing that I wanted was just some outside third.
Yeah.
I was like, it can be an SLP, it can be an OT, it can be a psychologist, it can be whoever. I just want some third party with credibility and gravitas as an expert to come and see what's happening and be like, yeah, this is happening. And we reached out to people that I have close relationships with for many years, and people were like afraid. Like, I've never seen experts so squirrely. Like, I don't even know if I can talk about this. And I was like, you can definitely talk about like you can talk to me about it. It's fine. But
Yeah.
just the fear of getting embroiled in something that would be like delegitimizing or undermine their own credibility as an expert creates this feedback loop where we were like reaching for until we finally landed on a good expert who was the OT, right?
Well, yeah, and actually before that, you did have an expert that you pulled in, a speech therapist who was anonymous, and that was early on. I mean, that was really kind of I think helped you because again, you didn't know, and I don't blame you. Like, is this legit? And from what you and what you especially 2 years ago, what you would read online because of ASHA and because there are these haters out there who are making a living out of being expert witnesses against communication. They're lumping it to facilitate communication. They throw it back to these, 1990s cases where, the sex abuse was alleged and discredited. And, that's a whole nother topic, but I still would love to talk to you. Like, I can't think of too many cases where you have something where, like I said, it's something that happened in the 90s,
right,
has been used to like delegitimize this entire form of communication and every iteration of it successfully up until like now we're finally getting momentum. But that was the fear, right? Like everyone's like, oh, we can't legitimize this because someone might use it to falsely accuse someone of sex abuse.
Right. No, it had the flavor of this just like verboten thing. But that's what I'm saying. These experts, I work with experts all the time on all kinds of wacky stuff. And I've never seen people be like, I don't know if I can even talk to you about this.
Right.
Get in trouble. And I was like, that's crazy. Because for me, that makes me want to do it more. If someone tells me something's off the table, I'm like, why? Tell me more about that. Like, why is that off the table? And it was pretty shocking. So actually, that's the thing that stood out most in your whole case was our efforts to find an expert and how bizarre it was just like delving into this field. And I think it's so much less taboo now, 2 years later.
Yeah, I think
watching that or nationally, or you know better than me, but like,
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think we're making headway as we predicted we would, because once you see it, you believe it. I mean, people, again, unless you have this doctrine in your head, like these a lot of speech therapists, such as Stone's former speech therapist, who was the one who hand delivered the ASHA statement to us and, all that. I think that, again, most people, if you're objective, you come at this and you're just like, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, that's a way to spell. It's a way to communicate. That's awesome. Like most people are happy. I want to know, and again, this is a little off topic on the law thing. How can ASHA get away with this? How can they get away with having this incredibly harmful statement, like that is being used to deny these individuals their rights, essentially? I mean, what's it going to take for, there's been conversations among parents, like, are there grounds for a class action lawsuit? Is there something that could be done? Because all these school districts and others, but really primarily the school districts, are using that to deny rights. without really understanding it. They're just able to say, "Oh, we're following ASHA guidelines." I'm just curious about your thoughts there, because
Yeah.
it's so awful. As you, I remember you were
Yeah.
fascist.
Did I say fascist?
You did. I loved it. Like I love her. She's great.
I throw out that word from time to time.
Well, it was
Uh,
fashion.
I mean,
Before,
my beef would obviously be with the districts who are hiding behind that. ASHA can do whatever they want. I mean, any professional organization can issue any proclamation that it wants to bind its members, and people do all kinds of
yeah,
weird active stuff for their own. If they feel like their profession is being, lawyers probably do it all the time. I can probably think of examples. But my issue again would be that individualization argument. Like if a district is doing a blanket no on something, that
right.
he is violative right there and predeterminative, and it runs afoul of IDEA. And we also remember we had talked about doing an ADA case as well. Got what we wanted through the IDEA hearing.
Yeah.
But I
And
think we go out and attack it. I think we need to attack it. We need to find a district that's saying blanket no without
right.
actually doing some individualized determinations, and then challenge it that way through like declaratory relief and get some like federal precedent on, hiding behind the ASHA prohibition as
Yeah.
a violation.
Yeah. Well, speaking of federal, that was one of the questions I had. Kind of again in like the current environment. Now we have, all kinds of stuff going on with the Department of Education. You have the Department of Justice now removing language, guidelines with ADA protection. What do you see? Does that concern you at all in terms of, student and parent rights at all? Is that something that people should be worried about?
No, I think what you're referring to is the agencies removing their guidance. I mean, so agencies like DOE and DOJ, they don't make law. They're not the legislature. The
Right.
IDEA and the ADA and Section 504, they all exist. They all are legislation that, that public entities need to abide by. The dismantling of DOJ and DOE and the unwinding of guidance that we liked. I mean, the guidance is just guidance anyway. It's not binding. It was meant to be, persuasive, not probative. So it's just, it's politics. Like, I don't worry about that. I worry about the judicial branch. I worry about the existence of the laws themselves. And in Washington also, we have a really robust Washington law against discrimination. So the disability protections there are really robust. And each state has adopted the state regulations, which adopt the IDEA and the CFRs. And so it's like, there's lots and lots of layers of laws that exist that aren't being undone, that aren't being taken away. So I'm not worried about the rights going away. I think if anything, it's shifted the onus onto private attorneys like me to enforce federal civil rights in the absence of, federal agencies that are doing the enforcement. And so, we just have to rise to that occasion. But I've had friends and colleagues in the DOJ and the DOE call me up when this was all first happening towards the beginning of the year and say, like, if my agency doesn't exist anymore, can I come to Cedar? Because you're doing the same work just in your own, through your private lens. And I was like, hell yeah, like, definitely, you surely can. So,
but I guess that would be the concern, right? Is that there wouldn't be this public avenue, for people to turn to in terms of info, or it would be weakened to a certain point, right?
the complaint process. But I will say, prior to the Trump administration, the DOE has had a problem with turning around OCR complaints timely and effectively. And I have struggled for years to get, I've had some that have hit and been really awesome. And I have amazing colleagues in the DOJ and the DOE who I adore. But I think there were enforcement problems also with the complaint process that needed to be addressed. So like, I have felt the burden on the private sector for a long time. I mean, I don't want them dismantled, obviously, but
right.
I think a whole lot on the ground.
Yeah, well, that's good to know. I mean, it sounds like it's still on relatively stable grounds, like you said, and especially we've got to rely on the judicial system,
Judicial branch.
Come on, hang on, don't
Hold the line.
hold the line. hold the line. I'm curious, what other cases other than ours have really kind of stuck with you in this field? I mean, you've been doing this for a while there, and I know there's so many, but like, is there any that really kind of jump out that you feel like are precedent setting?
maybe, let me think. I mean, so what we did, our special ed matter is administrative. So in the administrative realm, we've been doing some really interesting work about the science of reading and dyslexia. We've done some really important work about getting ABA in schools for students with autism to have adequate behavioral support so they can stay in the general education setting. Getting third-party agencies in to support people behaviorally. I think we've done some really impactful work around that. Had some really interesting inclusion cases for students with Down syndrome that have been, like a line of those for a while. And then that's, trying to keep kids in gen ed as much as possible. And then the flip side of that is the need for, therapeutic residential services and out of district services. So we've done a lot of that work too. We've had some really heavy cases related to isolation and restraint over the years.
Yeah.
And I've got a line of cases in Eastern Washington right now that are pretty distressing isolation and restraint cases where districts just are not equipped, and students with limited verbal who communicate through their behaviors,
Yeah.
isolated or restrained, like those are pretty dark. I mean, don't get me started. But I'm also, we do a ton of work at Cedar. We don't just do special ed. So I've also had some really interesting non-special ed cases. But yeah, it's a great practice. It's a lot of fun.
What?
Any one of my cases, like
Well, backing up a little bit, I'm just, for background, what led you to this field? How did you get involved in this, and why did you decide to focus on education law?
So I founded Cedar. Hold on just one second.
Okay.
Okay, I'll start that one over. So my background is I was a special education teacher and a social worker before I became an attorney. So I did my undergrad at UC Berkeley, Peace and Conflict Studies, and I was a preschool teacher while I was doing that, and I got really interested in early education. And then I went right to grad school out of undergrad at Columbia University, and I did a teaching degree and a social work degree and worked in Brooklyn, New York. And then Katrina hit, and I went to New Orleans and did special education in post-Katrina.
Wow.
Yeah. So I've always tried to find my point of intervention in systems to abate suffering and to help, vulnerable populations. Like, I feel like my whole career was like trying to find what that intervention point was.
Yeah.
And I got pretty compassion fatigue, overwhelmed after the Louisiana piece. And I took the LSAT kind of like in a fit of rage. And I was just like, I'm going to come back and sue all of you because this is so illegal. Like the civil rights violations were just so rampant after the storm. Before probably also, but yeah, I got the UW, went to UW for school law. I wanted to do education law. I worked district side for a few.
That's right. Okay.
Yeah. And then I started Cedar as like a second year lawyer in 2014 because there was no one firm doing all of it: disability law, civil rights, personal injury. We do a little employment too, just anything that can happen in schools, K-12, higher ed. And now we have, I think, 12 attorneys at the firm. And so
that's amazing.
I'm doing some really cool work in Oregon. I'm licensed in California, Oregon, and Washington now. We're doing a little bit of work in Idaho. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And we're doing, all kinds of work. We've made Ninth Circuit law, got some published Ninth Circuit opinions. We're doing federal, state, administrative, just the whole gamut. So I started Cedar because there was nothing like it. And I wanted something really holistic that drew upon my background. So,
I mean, talk about a perfect fit. And then, and then it's kind of a good news, bad news situation, right? I mean, it's good that you're there and that you could provide this level of services. The bad news is that they're so needed and that the demand is so strong for the services. You know what I mean? Like it's.
Yeah. But I mean, like any system, like any human system, everyone who has kids touches schools in some way, or all of us have been in schools in some way. So it's also like one of the most human things, one of the most societal things that we have.
Yeah.
So, sure, of course there should be a law firm devoted to education. It's a huge part of our everyday life. And it's the government. It's the government. And so when they do things that are violating civil rights and constitution, it needs to be enforced. So
yeah. When do you think parents should reach out for legal counsel? And do you think, like in our case, I've told people, one of my big regrets is that we didn't do it sooner. Now, again, it was slightly different because we didn't have the letterboard case. I know you don't know what you don't know. But this is our chance to tell people what they might want, what they should know, maybe.
I mean, Our model at Cedar is we always do a free consult. So people can reach out at any time and just like tell me a story. And I'll be like, oh, I'll tell people, I don't think you need a lawyer right now. I think what you should do is X, Y, and Z.
Okay.
It's just if things, education law is really cool because it's quite intuitive. And if you feel like something is not correct, or if you feel like you're being wronged, or if you feel like something is not functioning the way it's meant to, like you're probably right. And so I think what I like about civil rights law and education law in particular is it's deeply intuitive and very, very child focused and very affirmatively in support of access.
Yeah.
Well, my thing is like if it feels there's a gut check, if your mom or dad gut is saying, oh, this doesn't feel right, just call us and say, and that's our job as lawyers, is just to hear the human story, process it through our, it's like a Plinko game of like issue spotting. And then,
Right.
yeah, that sounds like, this or that, or this is a violation, or here's what I would suggest. And we do a lot of preventive advocacy too. We don't just do litigation. That's more reactive.
Right.
In your case, we tried to be proactive and preventive and to guide them towards the right decision, and the district wasn't having it. So we had to sue them. But,
Yeah. If it comes to that, but sometimes it's kind of wielding that stick too, or at least have, don't you think that's also effective as just what make them take notice that, hey, they're taking this seriously enough to hire a law firm, especially one like Cedar that knows what they're doing and has a great success rate. They're going to pay attention. I guess, as a parent, that's kind of the advice I would give is like, don't give the districts or your schools too much leash or a lot of times, sure, the teachers have the best interest in minds, but, they have to answer to people. There's a lot of things behind the scenes that we don't know or don't understand necessarily in terms of what may be driving certain decisions. But we have a right, we have to fight for our kids. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And they're going to fight for their budget. They're going to fight for their district. And sometimes that's what you have to do.
I tell people it's like the cost benefit analysis a lot of the time, and bringing us in kind of shifts that a little bit too, because they understand that like we can shake more resources loose. There's the threat of attorney's fees if we do have to litigate. I mean, it really changes the cost benefit analysis. And often if you're just stuck at the school level advocating, they don't even know what's available, and bringing in an attorney will get you to the district level, and then it kind of
Right.
So it's knowing what you don't know is pretty critical. But I attend meetings and people are like, oh my God, it's so different when you're here. But obviously I don't know what it's like when I'm not there. So I just have to like.
But you can imagine, right? I mean, you can imagine.
I guess,
It's just, it's just like, you have a policeman with you if you're, asking a question,
Yeah.
It's like, okay, there's someone I have to be accountable for. I'm going to, mind my P's and Q's and it's definitely different. I can tell you from experience.
Yeah. But I would love to not be needed for sure. And I'm a parent in the Seattle public schools, and it's like, I don't love constantly suing my school district on behalf of other people. I would much prefer that we, had competent leadership and well-funded programs and et cetera, et cetera. So it's good. It's good to be in a field where you wish you were trying to work yourself out of a job.
Right. I could totally see that. And just again, so people know, I mean, in our case, again, we sued and we did reach a settlement. The other area I do want to give you huge props, and I do all the time, again, I haven't told you this, but again, was finding Brightmont Academy. Because to go back, we were running into this wall with a school district. Stone was unhappy, not getting his needs met. He was getting second grade curriculum. And, we just said, this is stupid. Like, we're just going to pull him out because he's not getting anything valuable at all at the school. And I didn't know what I was going to do, but I figured even like I could sit there with Khan Academy and he'd get more out of that than the one he was getting. And you were the one who suggested, Brightmont Academy, which I had never heard of. I mean, because again, I wasn't familiar with alternative options.
Well, you were still trying to work within their system and work within the parameters of their program. And that's when they were like, nope, sorry, we can't, Asha. And so then we were like, well, we will go outside of your system then. And non-public agencies are a right for students who are unable to be served in the district. And because of Stone's particular profile and the individual pacing is so nice, like being able to work at
It's perfect.
You can communicate. Brightmont's awesome. There are a few really good one-on-one schools in Washington, and each one's like a little bit different. And I think that was such a good fit for you and Stone and your family. And Tony's amazing, the director. They're such good people there.
It was, yeah, again, it was the perfect recommendation, the perfect fit at the perfect time. And Tony talks about that. Now, again, Brightmont has embraced, Stone and the whole journey just so much. It's opened their eyes. It's just been this incredible story, and here he is. I can't remember if I sent you the video he made about Brightmont. I know I sent you some other stuff.
Oh yeah, no, he did.
Yeah, he created, like he loves it. He's just, just thrived. So speaking of Stone, I want to make sure I get the question asked.
Oh yeah.
He wanted to know if you really thought we would have won the case if it went to trial.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we would have. I think we were talking about having Stone testify also.
Oh yeah.
That would have been super interesting because I think the judge would have been really persuaded by Stone's testimony to see Stone communicating. And as things were going, and because you were able to place him at Brightmont privately while we were seeking placement there, that gave us the opportunity to build up our data and build up our evidence in support of the case. That was critical because you can sit and say, oh, I wish I had something, or wouldn't it be better? But if you're able to demonstrate and say, look, this is what he's capable of doing in this setting. Yeah, I think we were building our evidence. The expert thing was still always a little weird. We ended up getting a good expert who I appreciated a lot, but I was always still kind of grasping. And I'm curious now if some of the people that we'd asked before would now be willing 2 years later to serve in that role. I think they would be. And
I think you're right.
Yeah. And so I think we're just getting stronger and stronger, but I do think we would have won because I think we were correct. And I think maybe it's naive, but I still think like truth finds a way to prevail. And
I do too.
Exactly. It's empirical. I've been doing this for 10 years. It does. Yeah.
I know. I agree. I think it's, like I said, it's the truth is self-evident in this case. And again, and as you said, we were building, just having the teachers at Brightmont and Tony, like there's so much obvious evidence behind, his communication, his capabilities, everything that, the basic stuff. Again, all we're asking for was his education. Just give him access to the education.
That's why it settled though. Like bad cases don't settle. It's when that energy shifts and when the bricks in the wall that you're building all start to stick and grow and like it gets stronger and stronger, you can feel the energy shift in a case. And right when you're like, oh yeah, we'll win this at trial, that's when the other side's like, yeah, let's wrap this up and settle it. So, I think settling it's a good thing, but I think it also speaks to the strength of a case. Because if it's not a good case, they'll just take it to trial and try to defense us.
Yeah. Yeah. And, well, I was confident, but that's my personality too, right? Like I also love telling the story about the meeting that we had when they wanted to go over the quote unquote report that they created based on these assessments. And, how I just went ballistic and I was just, yelling and just like, why isn't this other information? Why did you exclude this? And you and Renee texting me like, just be quiet. Okay, meeting's over.
Well, that's the good thing though about having a lawyer is like you get to be the parent. You don't have the strategist and the cool-headed, negotiator. Like you've hired a professional. You can just feel your feelings and be the parent. So it's you're the client. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah, and I did. I did.
And I think got hot, but you were
hot. I just say that because again, a lot of people who know me, are surprised by that because I usually am pretty, calm and cool, even keeled, right? And I'm usually the diplomat. People kind of joke that I'm the diplomat or whatever. I'm like, no,
you're kidding. Like I have clients. I represent judges, lawyers, professionals, all kinds of people, doctors, very sophisticated professionals who are like, I cannot wear all the hats in this meeting. I'm just
right.
Be the mom and you do the thing and you do your, and that's, we're all doing what we can. But when you're the parent,
that's job one. Job one. So we have a couple of segments I wanted to do with you. And again, you're quick on your feet, so I apologize and then prepare you, but you'll be.
That's okay.
Yeah. So the first one is autism, fact or fiction, or it could just, in this case, it could be education law, fact or fiction.
Get QuickTime ready, and here we go. This is Autism Fact or Fiction. We're breaking down what's real, what's rumor, and what might surprise you. Let's go.
Okay.
And what we like to try to do, and again, I have some, just either read a statement or something that, again, that maybe people think is a stereotype, and then talk about whether or not it's fact or fiction. So in my case, I'll say one, and again, as you think, again, like I said, you're quick on your feet, but fact or fiction, schools are legally required to provide the best possible education to every student with a disability.
No, false fiction. It's only what's adequate, what's necessary, what's required, not potential maximizing, not what's best. It's the
Right.
Nick, not the Cadillac. Yeah.
It's and that's what FAPE, right? The basis of
Free and appropriate public education.
yeah.
Just there's a floor, not a ceiling, but you should still fight for the sky for your child. And
Absolutely.
then I know where the floor is. Then we can usually, end up somewhere in between.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Do you have any fact or fiction you want to throw out there that people may not be aware of, or again, a stereotype maybe that people a false belief that's out there?
Huh. I mean, you have to have a diagnosis to qualify for special education.
Oh,
What is it? Is it
false. I'd say false.
false?
Yeah.
Just have
But I could see where people, I think you're right. I think that is a perception. I've seen that in the forums, the
Yeah.
Facebook groups I belong to.
or that people have to go and get some expensive private eval or some
Yeah.
like we take all kinds of cases at Cedar. I mean, like people can pay hourly, and that, is one method, and then we can get fee reimbursement and settlement usually, hopefully, or if we prevail, we can get fee reimbursement for the civil rights claims. But we have a lot of super low income families or families that aren't able to
Oh,
pay,
good.
and we do work on a fee shifting basis or contingent basis. If a case is super strong and compelling and the parent's good to work with, like I'll go to the math, and then we get paid at the end. I feel confident that we'll recoup at the end. So
That's awesome. That's great.
yeah, so I've had cases where districts are like, oh, you have to go get this private threat assessment or this private eval or do something or get something medical. And I'm like, that is not the case. Like the onus child find obligation is robust on school districts to affirmatively identify and evaluate students. And it can't be
Yeah.
the F in FAPE is free, right? So you can't make it
Right.
money to the family or parent labor. I mean, I know you were working as Stone's CP,
Still am.
still are. And
Yeah.
I think the next gen lawsuit after what we accomplished would be to get them to train communication partners to do spelling in the districts. We didn't get that.
Right.
We worked outside of them and we got an individualized result for Stone, but you're still doing a lot of labor. This is not FAPE. This is, above and
It's
beyond.
not. No, this was kind of like the next best scenario, just given the situation, the timing, right? I mean, there's a lot of circumstances in Stone's case, in terms of, he's a twin, as I've talked about in this podcast, and Ty just finished his first year at UW, and Stone's anxious to get on with his educational, career. And this was really kind of the quickest path. I mean, this is what we decided, and why I'm still his communications partner. At the time, again, I remember we talked about, well, we'll train the teachers and they can do it, before really realizing how hard it is to train someone and especially have that trust and everything else. And I'm just like, for the time it's going to take to do that, I just might as well do it. I mean, again, the goal is to get there. Let's get to that diploma, get him into the university, wherever it will be next. He's still gunning for Harvard, and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, it's parents carry a lot of the burden. And even when we recoup attorney's fees or eval costs, your time, parental time is not, that's another factor fiction. Like parental time is recoverable under the law. It's like, no, it is not. And the hours and hours and hours that you will spend is just parenting and, your journey. But yeah, the law doesn't make parents whole.
Right. But it's still very much worth it. Okay. Next segment will be our tip of the week.
Hey parents, gather around, it's time to speak. We're here with your tip of the week. Strategies and wisdom just for you. Autism parents, we know what you go through.
So this is, again, where we like to, and we've already given a lot of tips. You just gave one, but again, for this week's tip of the week, I I want to emphasize, get everything in writing. Every meeting, every communication, anything that's shared as much as possible, particularly again, when you're dealing with special education, promises, all that. I mean, from day one, you're going to, there may be a day you're going to need it. And if you have to escalate, and you're going to have your paper trail. And again, it's not the most heartening news, again, if you're the parent of a kindergartner now or an elementary school child, but it better to be safe than sorry.
Well, I appreciate it as a lawyer. If you come to me in a dispute and you're like, no, it was all verbal. I'm like, oh God. But
Right.
things that are cool, like you can write the confirmatory email in a cool way where you're just like, hey, thanks for the call. Just want to confirm what we talked about. Up, 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 up. Thank you. I think there's non-combative ways to paper your own file and to make sure there's a record of what's happening.
Right.
It's the like keeping the good relationship, being diplomatic while also, building the record and documenting everything is kind of the art form.
It is an art form. And I'm glad that you said that because and again, this would be the other segment we like to have, but we'll just jump into it. It's like parent confessions where we kind of, this is our human side where we admit like mistakes that we made or things that we've done in the past to let people know, like, again, this is hard stuff you're dealing with.
Morning routines can go astray. Found socks in the fridge one day. Laughter's the best remedy. Hey, we're just finding our own way. Mom, dad confessions every week.
My parent confession is, as I kind of alluded to earlier, kind of giving too much leash, giving the benefit of the doubt too much. Feel like I had to be that parent. Hey, I really appreciate you helping when figuring that that's going to give more support to Stone when it was actually the opposite. And that's, I can't change it. I wish I could go back and change it, but that's where, again, maybe I've swung too far the other way. Now I'm telling people they're not your friends. It's like, that's not just,
So is like, yeah, what was I going to say about that? It's hard because it's like education law is like getting divorced while you're still married to somebody or like living with somebody or like fighting with your employer when you're still working there. Like fighting with a school district that's actively educating your child is so delicate because
you're coexisting, right? Like there's coexistence that you're navigating.
Yeah. And so just trying to strike that balance of trusting your gut, working with them, but then knowing when to call it. Yeah.
And they're, again, particularly in this case, just so vulnerable. And, in Stone's case, he wasn't able to communicate what was going on and what's happening and all this until he gained, spelling to communicate and all this. And we've learned so much, mostly for the best. But as I've admitted on here, like there's been some reckoning. Because I don't think I ever told you about this, but one of the first things when he really became an open speller was he asked me, he's like, how could you, a mom, put me into intensive ed? Why didn't you think I was smart? And it's just like, that's heartbreaking at the time. And you just have to be honest.
So he's 19 right now, right?
He's 19. Yes.
He'll be 20 in November.
Yes.
Yeah. We have see a few more years. What's his timeline for?
We're thinking a year. I mean, he's now taking classes 4 days a week. About three classes a day. He's 3 to 4. I'm teaching one of his classes at home. I'm doing English 11 with him because it's all, as you know, online. Mm-hmm. I feel confident. I have my journalism degree. I can handle English. But he's doing biology. He's wrapping up his first semester of Algebra 2. I mean, again, right? World history. He loves world history. Yeah. So he's right now, we're just knocking off the state requirements that he has to have to get his diploma.
Looking back to the IEP goals that they were giving him year over year over year, like the same.
Oh, it's just, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like I said, it's heartbreaking, but to his credit, entirely to his credit, he's focused on the future. He's happy. He runs around saying happy, happy to people. He spreads joy. He's just, he's amazing. And he's really excited that we have a chance to talk. He's very, as we all are, very, grateful for you and the work that you did for us. And, and now I'm out here and I've talked to countless families across the country who are, unfortunately, again, running into these same situations and trying to share advice where we can.
Yeah. Well, we can, I don't know if you have a copy of the complaint that we filed in your case, but like,
Yeah.
the work product, they can build off of what we did. I'm always happy to answer questions for people and,
Yeah, that's great. Well, thanks. Yeah, that's a great, one of the ideas I had, again, too many ideas, not enough time or execution. But I was thinking it would be nice if somehow there could be some kind of this like repository, because there are other parents, remember, that who had helped and shared some of their information with us that was useful at the time, because there's a lot I didn't know. I mean, I know a lot more now, but at the time, I mean, I was just drinking from a fire hose with all this stuff. And I just think there's, again, so many families who are dealing with it that will continue to deal with it. It would just be great if there was this repository where people can go to and here's what to expect. Here's what this could look like. Here's what that could look like. Here's what, something like that.
Yeah, in all our spare time. But I mean,
all of our spare time, right? Let's get our intern on it.
Yeah, I should do a blog. I don't know if we did a blog post at Cedar. We could do a blog post just about Stone's case and Stone's.
Oh, that'd be great.
And then link to the different parts of it. I've done that in cases that are impactful or in new areas, or just like making a website where people can put their stuff. Like Rights Law is good and Understood is good, but doing one that's specific to advocacy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that'd be a great start. I mean, I think if it's something that you can do, because, like I said, I do steer people, to the website. And your website's going to come. I mean, I have my little blog that I've been writing about, but
I'll email you about that, because we could collaborate blog post and we could do some links to some of what we used and how we did it and kind of what our I think that'd be great to do a how-to blog post specific to Stone's story.
Yeah, because we know there are multiple. There are a lot of those out there, and there will be more. I just say it again and again. It's just such a fascinating world. It's, as I've been able to meet other non-speakers, families. One of the things we've done is we've started a local support group, in the sense of a support group, a social group. We get together for coffee, or we've organized dances, and we've created a community now of non-speakers who get to hang out together. And, they have connection, they have community, which is, something that we all deserve, right? Yeah.
Sure. I love.
Like I said, this is the case. I could always talk about this forever, but I know your time is valuable, and I just can't thank you enough for what you've done. Like I said, not just for my family, but for many others. You walked into our world with curiosity, openness, and a fierce dedication, and there's no way we'd be where we are today if it wasn't without you, I should say. So before we go, how can our listeners and viewers connect with you?
They can email me at Lara, Lara, at Cedar Law PLLC.com. You can check out our website, which is cedarlawpllc.com. We have a contact us page. Like I said, we do free 10-minute phone consults, or we have like a flat fee hour-long thing that I've done with people before, or just, there's no work-life separation. It's all graded, and it's all like a part of that, finding my best point of intervention as a person. And so I'm always excited to meet with people and talk about the work that we've done and the work that we're going to do. And we have a really good team at Cedar. So
it's a great team. I will vouch for that. Again, if you ever, need an official testimonial, let me know. Be happy to provide that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, and if you are watching, listening, hopefully this episode moved you or taught you something new. Please share it with others. Leave a review, subscribe to the pod. Everything we do, every action helps grow the movement and spreads awareness, which is ultimately why we're doing this. And to every family out there fighting to be heard, you're not alone. So until next time, I'm David Kaufer, and this is The Lighter Side of the Spectrum, and we'll catch you next time.